Arthur was enjoying his new life on his branch line. He adapted well to his new home and made many new friends and seen many new places. He loved living by the sea and taking plenty of fish trains to the mainland. But with the beginning of winter, he didn't have much work to do. He appreciated the rest, but was growing bored. One day, the Fat Controller came to see Arthur. "Boko has broken down, and I need you to go and help Edward on his branch line." "Yes, sir," exclaimed Arthur. Edward greeted him when he arrived, and they soon got to work. Arthur was just having a rest when... "Ah!" screamed Arthur. "Hello, Arthur," giggled Bill and Ben. "Oh, it's you two. I should have known. Shouldn't you two be at the clay pits? They've closed it down for the winter and told us to shunt at the docks." "I see," said Arthur. "Anyways, can you two bring me my train? I have to leave soon." Fine." The twins scurried away to find Arthur's train. As they left, a thick layer of fog covered the docks and a heavy snowfall began. "What's taking them so long? I'm sure to be late now," thought Arthur crossly. The twins arrived with Arthur's train, and he was coupled up. When the guard blew the whistle, Arthur puffed away. Arthur raced down the line, trying to make up for lost time. "Slow down," called his driver. "It isn't safe to be traveling at these speeds in the fog." Arthur ignored him as he didn't want to be late. All of a sudden, a horrible screeching sound echoed around. Arthur looked around to see where the noise was coming from. His driver and fireman covered their ears until it stopped with a bump and a crash. "What was that?" cried Arthur. "I don't know," said his driver. "We can't stop here in the fog. We'll tell the signalman at the next station." Arthur arrived at the next station, and his driver told the signalman and station master about the screeching brakes and the crash. "Were there any engines heading through there?" asked the driver. "No. Edward doesn't come through here for another hour." Arthur was starting to get very scared. "Then what did we hear?" "Beats me," said the station master. The signalman pointed to the rear of the train. "Driver, where is the rest of your train?" "What do you mean?" quizzed the driver. "You're missing the last 3 trucks and the brake van." "That's what the noise must have been," thought Arthur. "I'll go and clear the line. You go and get your trucks." The signalman went to his box to make the call. When they were cleared, Arthur puffed back down the line, feeling very silly. "It must have been Bill and Ben messing with me," he thought. But when they found the trucks, they were on the tracks and the couplings were intact. The driver and fireman were very confused. "I'm sure I heard a crash," said the fireman. "Me too, and the couplings are fine. So how did the trucks break away?" Just then they heard an unfamiliar whistle. Arthur jumped. "Something very strange is happening," his driver pondered. Arthur was frightened and wanted to leave. They coupled the trucks back on, and he quickly puffed away. When Arthur got back to the docks, he told Edward what had happened. "Those silly twins didn't secure my train properly, and I had to go all the way back and get my trucks back," Arthur fumed. Edward turned pale. "I don't think it was the—" Just then, Bill and Ben puffed in. "It wasn't our fault. It must have been your clumsiness. Don't blame us." "Oh yeah, I'm sure you two had nothing to do with—" "It wasn't the twins that caused this," said Edward coldly. "Then who was it? Salty?" asked Arthur. "I believe it was Billy." "Who's Billy?" asked the 3 engines. "Billy was an orange tank engine. He worked this line many years before even I did." "Billy? I've never heard of this Billy before," said Ben, "and we have worked here for many years." Edward ignored them and continued. "Billy was arrogant and very impatient. He thought he was the best engine on the whole railway, which would eventually lead to his downfall." "What happened?" asked the twins. Edward sighed and then continued. One winter's day, Billy was tasked with taking a goods train up the line. He was in a bad mood and was rough with the trucks. The trucks didn't like that and planned to get back at him. Not too far down the line, they started pushing him at a tremendous rate. With the ice in his weak brakes, he couldn't stop the heavy trucks and was thrown off the rails. The crash was very bad. No one survived, not even the trucks. I found the wreck when I arrived with the breakdown train. Billy was a mangled piece of metal. He didn't even resemble an engine anymore. Sometimes I hear his whistle when I travel on that part of the line, but never a crash. Arthur's heart sank. All of the engines were silent. I have a feeling that won't be the last time we hear from him this winter, said Edward. The engines were soon called off to work, but stayed silent for the rest of the day. Ben thought about Edward's story all day. Eventually, he asked Salty about it. Salty, is that story that Edward told true? Ben asked quietly. Of course not, laughed Bill. Don't be such a scaredy engine. And he puffed away. Not that I know of, laughed Salty, and I wouldn't worry about that, me hearty. I've been around these docks for a few years, and I haven't heard any strange things. Thanks, Salty. It was getting dark as Bill puffed down the line. Ghost, laughed Bill. How ridiculous. Even so, Bill was still feeling nervous. A thick layer of fog covered the tracks in front of him, and it started snowing heavily. Arthur must have taken on some bad cold. He's hearing things, Bill said to himself. Just then, he heard a faint whistle coming from down the line. That must be Edward, Bill thought. But that didn't sound like Edward. Next he heard brakes screeching and trucks laughing. Bill soon found out where the sounds were coming from. Bill opened one eye. The engine and his train had disappeared. Bill was shaking violently, unable to move. Arthur soon came with the breakdown train. The workmen looked in horror. Bill's train had been completely destroyed. The only thing left of the trucks was broken wood and twisted metal. You saw him, didn't you? Asked Arthur. Bill didn't reply, but Arthur knew the answer. Arthur shunted Bill into the shed and pulled in next to him. Then they all went to sleep, except for Bill. He had to make sure Billy wasn't there.